biggest macro setup of all time, which is the exponential age meets crypto meets quantitative easing. Those are so explosive, and I think it repeats over the next few years, that I want to have all of my excess savings in that, because it's a once in a lifetime opportunity to me. Now, and that's proven out. I've been that same way since 2020, and it's been very well. I'm still up huge amounts in my crypto positions. Technology positions I only started last year. They're all up a lot. Let's see, if I can stay on the ball and it works out. But that's my thesis.
Right.
Your thesis may differ. That's my thesis, and I have an income stream, so I'll use it that way. I'm lucky enough to have houses paid for and stuff like that, so I have to worry less about the future part of that. Other people, if you're much younger, then that asset allocation makes sense. Because if you're buying a 401k, then your excess savings should be in taking huge risk, as long as you've got security around, where you live, your job, and maybe your 401k investments as your retirement future. But then you can take risk. People in the middle wouldn't do that. I would be much more risk averse, because I've got security of assets on my future security, and I've got security of income, because I think the opportunity set is outsized. And as I said, if you're younger, you can take a risk because you've got plenty of time. If you lose some of that capital, if it all goes wrong, you've got time to do that. So young people should take risk. It's the middle stage, that kind of 40 to 60. It really depends on your own setup, where you are in your life journey. So you structure your life as a portfolio, but if you're in the middle there, you structure your portfolio really carefully as well. I don't know when the BlackRock ETF comes. I mean, it's just a ludicrous waste of everybody's energy, this, the slowness of the SEC in approving stuff. But we'll look back in a year's time, it won't matter what date it was. The next catalyst of Bitcoin could be anything. I have no idea. It could be the Fed cutting rates, it could be the bond market losing control and people wanting that, it could be anything. But I'm just not a short-term guy, The last time I traded crypto was January, when I was adding. I added in June, October and January. I just don't trade it. I just buy it and hold it and observe. And just everybody gets so wound up about prices. Easiest thing is just buy the stuff, stick it in your ledger, just not do anything. It's a lot less stressful as well, particularly if you're not using leverage. It's so easy. All of the business cycle indicators, all of the inflation, forward-looking inflation indicators, all of the unemployment indicators are all suggesting the bond yield should come down, and that inflation continues to fall, both at core level and at headline level, and that unemployment continues to slowly grind higher. So why are bonds not suggesting that? While equity markets already started pricing in the fact that there's more liquidity in the system. And I think it's down to supply. I think it's really down to supply, because the Treasury has to issue a lot of bonds to finance both the interest payments from the bonds that are coming from maturity, set at higher rates, and the new borrowings that they have. The bond market is already trying to absorb a bunch of this stuff, and there's just not the ability to absorb it all. The issue is there's about $6 trillion of debt maturing between now and the end of the year. What the Treasury have been doing is issuing short-dated notes generally to finance it. The reason they're doing that is they don't want to lock in 5% rates, because before you know it, the budget deficit explodes higher. I think the narrative will break by Q4 when we'll start to see the Fed cutting aggressively. In the meantime, do yields go higher? I don't know. I'm watching them closely. There's a risk that they do, and I'm stuck in a bond trade that's losing money. I've had a great year on technology and crypto, and having to offset some of that in bonds. So I still think bond yields end lower, but there is a risk that they lose control here because of the supply side, and there's not enough liquidity in the bond market right now. And therefore, I think that increases the chance of some yield curve control, whether it's like an intervention in the bond market. And we've seen that in the past. It's not uncommon for the US to do. Japan obviously does it. The UK did it recently as well. So listen, I think this turns around, but could it squeeze higher first yields? For sure. Yeah, so again, it's this issue of the Fed staying as long as possible because they really want to have the complete green light to do what they want, crush inflation expectations. The market knows rates are too high, obviously, and this is the higher for longer argument, which has been pretty accurate. And the question is how fast does it reverse? And the market never usually forecasts this right. Normally, once they do cut, they cut faster than the SOFR curve or the Eurodollar curve used to in the past. So we have to wait and see. But it's all to play for in Q4 for me. So we know that the regional banks have problems with their bond positions, and if bond yields keep rising, they keep losing money. That makes them illiquid, and with high rates, there's money moving from deposit accounts in banks that are only paying 0.5% and moving to money market funds that are paying 5%. So they're losing their deposits, and they've got losses here. Every time you take a deposit out, you have to kind of unwind some of the trades, but they're all down. So there's a huge, massive mark-to-market loss that goes on, and they're having to borrow money from the Fed to fund that right now. So in this financing facility that the Fed set up. Also, if the bond market breaks, it means that there is not enough participation from the key participants, banks, asset managers, market makers, to keep market liquidity. So prices start gapping around, setting interest rates which were not the intention of the Federal Reserve. And if they're setting interest rates that were not the intention of the Federal Reserve in a very meaningful way, then it can create problems. So it is very risky here, what happens to the bond market. So people need to keep an eye on it. The equity market might not like it either. Even the crypto markets may not like it if yields go up, because that puts pressure on everybody on their borrowing costs. First principles, there's too much debt and we can't manage it. And we don't have the money to pay for the interest, let alone actually pay off any of the debt. And that's the dirty truth. And we don't raise enough taxes because economic growth is trending lower over time due to demographics. So you don't have the money to pay the interest. You can't pay off the debt. So you're in this trap where you have to, everything is about managing the debt, which is why in the end, I saw this coming back from 2008, 2012 is why I got into crypto. I got into crypto for this. You could see that the end game of the debt, and in fact, I've done some videos called The End Game, make it impossible to deal with. Now, most people think there's a debt default. I don't think there is a debt default. I just think that the use of central bank balance sheet goes exponential, which increases the cost of assets, but nobody's wages go up.